What's up, Bug Doug with D&E in the Garage? I have some very sad news to share with you this morning, among some other things I want to talk about. But first, yesterday, Lee Iacocca passed away at 94 of natural causes. Now, if you've seen almost any of our videos, you know how much respect we have for Lee Iacocca on this channel. In fact, pretty much any car guy has to respect the life and legacy of Lee Iacocca. He entered into the auto industry with the Ford Motor Company. He quickly, well, not quickly, but eventually became the president of the Ford Motor Company. He's the one responsible for the Mustang when he and Henry Ford had a falling out. He moved over to Chrysler. He saved the Chrysler Corporation. He gave us the minivan. He gave us the K-Car platform, which I know a lot of people don't like today. The K-Car gets a lot of shade, but K-Cars were pretty cool, and they helped Chrysler kind of get into the modern age and stop building boats. Most importantly to this channel, he is the one who, when AMC was going under, said, you know what, I think we're going to buy that crazy little Jeep brand and keep that thing going. So Jeep as we know it today, for better or worse, it's for better, don't be a jerk, we have to thank Lee Iacocca for that. It is entirely possible that the Jeep brand would have died in 1987 when the majority of AMC's holdings did, not all, but the majority of, and that would have been really sad. We would have never gotten, well, the WJ, and obviously a bunch of other really cool Jeeps. So Lee Iacocca, arguably one of the most influential figures in the auto industry in the 20th century. He's been out of the game for a little bit now, but I think we all should give him a quick moment of silence. There will be a D&E video on the full life and legacy of Lee Iacocca. There's no possible way I could have thrown it together, and I would never have thrown it together just since finding this out last night. One of our viewers is actually the one who told me. This guy, he'll send me messages on Instagram, and he always gets me the latest breaking automotive news like a little bit before I would have found it out. So a big shout out to Jeff, who's always one step ahead of me. I really appreciate it. He's actually responsible for the video I did last week on the new Grand Cherokee. He sent me a bunch of info on that, and I was like, dang, that's a lot of info. We should do a video on it. So I really appreciate that. The stuff you guys send us on Instagram, Facebook, in the comments here, on our email is crazy. We really appreciate it. We love talking to people, and just the community that's being built around D&E is really awesome. We really enjoy that. So keep an eye out for a proper tribute video to Lee Iacocca. It's going to take a while to put together. The man has a lot in his trophy case that we're going to have to represent. Now, moving on to the next thing I want to talk about, I had this realization, and it's relatively obvious now. Here's the backstory. The AC in this Jeep was being a little bit finicky. It wasn't super cold at idle, at low RPMs. Occasionally that's been a sign of low pressure, so I had it pressure tested and it turned out it was fine. So I'm thinking, all right, maybe the fan isn't working. Now the Jeep has not been overheating, but the AC was just not blowing super cold when I'm in stopped traffic or at idle. And another issue it's having is that the power steering pump is being a little finicky at low RPM and at idle. Now, on a normal vehicle, those two things would not be in any way connected. But it occurred to me, duh, the friggin' 47WJ from 99 to 03 has a hydraulic cooling fan. The cooling fan is run off of the power steering pump. Now, this has always seemed odd to me. Since I first heard about that, and then when I got this Jeep, it just seemed it's the kind of thing a German automaker would do. All right, there's no need to make it that complicated. Yes, it's very cool, and I understand their thinking. Well, it's not taking any extra energy for the engine to do this. The power steering pump is already running to power the power steering. Why not run the cooling fan off of it? But it's just not necessary. Why bother? Just give me an electric fan. This is why I hate German cars. They over-engineer things strictly for the purpose of over-engineering them. They're just trying to flex how big their engineering brains are. Oh, look what we did. We designed a cooling fan that runs off a power steering pump. Yeah, so you're saying if the power steering pump goes, you overheat in traffic? Maybe. Screw you, man. Screw you. It's a stupid design, and I didn't like it before this, and now I officially hate it. All right? It makes changing the cooling fan out difficult. It makes changing the power steering pump out more difficult because you've got these extra lines. It gives you additional places for there to be leaks because you have power steering lines running all over the place. You've got to have a power steering cooler with this method, so you're jumbling up the front of your radiator there. And now if your power steering has an issue, it affects the cooling of your engine. Just keep it as a separate system. I do not want my engine cooling system to be in any way dependent on anything but itself. Now I understand what you're about to say. Well, just so keep your power steering system up and running. Obviously that's always what we want to do, but what's illustrated here is I have a very small power steering issue, something that I likely would not need to address for some time. All right, now, and before you ask, yes, the fluid's clean. Yes, it's the proper fluid. Yes, it's at the proper level. All right, now it's just that little jitter. You know, when you start the Jeep up in a parking spot and you go to cock the wheel all the way and it just burp, 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 burp. It's just that. It's not a big problem, but it's apparently underpowering the fan at low RPM, at idle, enough that it's not cooling the AC, which means it could potentially, if it's a 95-degree day and I get stuck in traffic for an hour, it could potentially cause my Jeep to overheat, and there's nothing I can do about it. On my 4-liter, what's the biggest problem with 4-liter cooling fans? The relays go. The relays go. So what do? You drill a hole in your header panel so that you have access to it, and then you carry 2 of them around. I get them at the junkyard for $1 a piece. I've been in traffic on Route 80 in a 2002 WJ with the 4-liter, started to overheat. I pull over real quick, I pull my headlight out, I replace the relay, I put my headlight back in, and I'm good to go. There's nothing I can do if my power steering pump were to suddenly fail, and I don't like that. That scares me. Now, I'm considering, well, first of all, I'm gonna get a new power steering pump. This weekend, we're going to Vince's, gonna get a new power steering pump. I'm going to swap out this hydro fan. I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet. Martinbuilt, if you don't know Martinbuilt is a YouTube channel, and if you want to know how everything should be done, you go and watch Martinbuilt. We've often called ourselves on this channel monkeys with a toolbox. Martin is the opposite. He's a monkey in a lab coat. His work, the custom work he does, is so clean. The point is, he put out about 2 months ago, he swapped out his hydro fan in his WJ. He used an electric fan from a 5.9 ZJ, and he did a bunch of swaps. I think he's an electrical engineer anyway, like in his professionally, because his grasp of electrical systems and building them, it goes way beyond what I can even comprehend. The custom work he did on that build is awesome. I don't want to say it's above my head, but it might be outside of the amount of work I'm willing to put into this. In 2004, Jeep got wise and they swapped the hydro fan for an electric fan, so you can get a Jeep WJ 4.7 factory electric fan. I might swap that in. The issue is you have to put like a resistor in so that you don't throw a check engine light, or you have to leave the solenoid hanging there. We're gonna get into that in another video. Another thing I'm thinking about doing in the meantime is possibly putting a rescue pusher fan on the front of my radiator. Something on a switch that if I see my temp creeping up, or I have an issue, or God forbid the power steering pump does go and I'm an hour and a half from home, I can flip on this pusher fan. If you don't know, a pusher fan goes in front of the radiator and pushes air through it, whereas your fan behind it is kind of pulling it through it. At least I have something. It scares me. This realization really shook me this week. I was like, that's a terrible design, and I don't have time in the middle of the week to just drop everything and replace a power steering pump. So I made this realization, and I was like, shoot, you know, it was like Tuesday when I made it. It was actually last week. I didn't have time over the weekend, whatever. So that's really bums me out, and the reason I'm bringing it up in a video is I'd love to know what you guys think about this. I went online to try to see, have do 4.7 guys have this issue all the time? Do power steering pumps go and it causes your Jeep to overheat? And I honestly couldn't find anything. And when I first bought this Jeep, I brought up how dumb the hydro fan seemed to me. And I don't remember, it was one of our viewers. Somebody was like, yeah, it is kind of over-engineered, but nobody really has problems with them. So maybe this is a unique issue I'm having. Let me know. I want to know, because this is something I'm going through and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my Jeep. What is your impression of the 4.7 with the hydro fan? Do you have any issues? Have you ever had an AC cooling issue because of the hydro fan? Have you swapped the hydro fan for an electric fan? And if so, which method did you use? Additionally, and I forgot to look into this before the video, there's got to be a mechanical fan option for the 4.7. Even if they didn't put it on the WJ, which I don't believe they did, maybe on like the Dakota or something. Not that that's the direction I would go, because there's no reason to steal engine power. You don't need to. I'm going to go electric fan is what I'm getting at. But yeah, man, hydro fan really bumming me out. Another thing I want to talk about very briefly while I have you here. This video's already gone longer than I intended for it to. If you didn't see it, about 2 weeks ago, Eric and I did a live stream. We proved to ourselves, the whole purpose that, I know it was short and the content was lacking. It was kind of a video about nothing. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. The main purpose was proof of concept. We needed to better understand how the live stream idea worked and how it would work running off of a cell phone. The reason was we want to do a live stream in the U-Pull, possibly do that often or sometimes, whatever, more than once. Now that we have the proof of concept, it's going to happen. Here's the thing, we may not be able to give you guys a ton of notice. Our lives are friggin' crazy. As we've illustrated before, YouTube's obviously not our job. We have normal jobs. I have a kid. Eric has a kid. Eric has another kid coming like within a couple weeks. So lots on our plate. We don't always have time to plan out our trips to the yard as much as we'd like to, which means we may not be able to plan out when our live stream is going to be. So we want to encourage everybody to, if you have these platforms, find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram. We may only be able to be like, hey guys, today at 2 we're going to the U-Pull. Tune in if you want to. Now, I'm bringing this up because so many of you have expressed the desire to see a live stream from the U-Pull, and so many of you commented on our last live stream, shoot, I didn't know you were going to do it. I missed it. I'm bummed. We do the live stream, we do the videos for y'all to see. So if we're going to have to do it impromptu, we will try our best to put it on Instagram. There is a YouTube community tab where we can post stuff, which we do post up. If you haven't seen that, you have to be following us and you have to have notifications on, I think, for that field to come up. So if you want notifications from us, put the notifications, the little bell thing. Instagram, Facebook, we'll try to blast it out on all social media forums as early as possible so that you guys know. Bringing this up because it's entirely possible, if the planets align, our trip to the U-Pull this weekend could be a live stream. I would love to do a 4th of July live stream for you guys from the U-Pull. It's just very difficult to plan it out and know for sure that that's definitely going to happen. The best thing I can do is tell you guys where our social media platforms are, invite you to follow us on all of those, including subscribing and hitting the bell icon on YouTube so that you'll get the messages we put out, and in that way I can tell you beforehand. That's pretty much all I got for today. This wasn't really even going to be a video. I was planning to talk about the 4.7 hydro fan at some point, and then last night Lee Iacocca passed away, and I just wanted to mention it because I really respect this man. He is just a genius businessman. He's the son of an immigrant. His father, I think, owned like a hot dog stand, and he went on to be arguably the most powerful, recognizable figure in the U.S. auto market for something like 50 years before he really backed away from Chrysler. He's just an amazing person and character, and his story is incredible. His reach is incredible. I mean, he made incredible impacts on two of the big three automakers, and you could argue all three, because the work he did with Ford on the Mustang directly resulted in the Chevy Camaro, and the work he did with Chrysler inevitably impacted how Chevy would react through the late 80s, 90s, 2000s, and into today. You can't point at any one person and say they did more than Lee Iacocca for the U.S. auto industry for the last, I think he was hired by Ford in 1943, and he retired from, I don't remember when he retired from Chrysler, sometime in the 90s. That's 50 years, man. He had a 50-year career, and he was the head of two of the big three automakers. Let that sink in. This guy is so friggin' cool. A business genius built up from nothing. Oh, I can't wait. To do the Lee Iacocca video. Unfortunately for you guys, it's probably gonna be a 3-hour video, because I'm not gonna be able to shut up about him. Anyway, let me know about those 4.7 hydro fans. I'm really trying to figure out what direction to go with this thing. It's only the beginning of the summer and I'm already having a cooling issue, so I want to address this. Not that my Jeep's overheating though. AC, just a quick side note, AC issues are often the first sign that you're going to have a cooling issue, because AC is very finicky, and if your fan's not operating properly, your AC will be the first thing that tells you before you start to overheat. Anyway, that's all we got for today. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.